Imagine standing at a crossroads. One path is clearly marked, safe, logical, endorsed by everyone around you. The other? It's more like a faint trail, barely visible. No clear signs, no guarantees. Yet, something in you draws you towards it. Not your fear, and not your logical mind either, or that pros and cons list you tend to make. Something deeper is calling you. That quiet inner pull, that subtle knowing, is what most people experience long before they have the language for it. We call it intuition. And if you're like most of the people I work with, you've had flashes of it your whole life. But you've probably second-guessed it, or you override it, or explain it away. Today, we're going to start to change that. In this first episode, I want to do 3 things. Give you a clear, grounded understanding of what intuition actually is. Bust a few myths that secretly block people from trusting their intuition. And help you start recognizing how your own intuition has already been working in the background of your life. By the end of this series, my intention is that you'll feel both relieved because you're not crazy and curious because there's a lot more available to you than you've been taught. So welcome to the first episode in our series on intuition. Welcome to Evolving Humans. I'm your host, Julia Marie. If you're a thoughtful seeker who feels something shifting inside and you want to understand what that means, Evolving Humans is the place for you. We explore how consciousness is changing and provide you with practical wisdom to help you understand your own spiritual transformation within a larger context. If you're ready to see your life as part of a greater wave of remembering, Evolving Humans will take that journey with you. Intuition is hard to define without diminishing its power. Most people don't experience intuition as a clear signal at first. It comes in more like a tug in your gut or a sudden inner knowing or just a quiet sense of this is right or maybe something is off here. Perhaps you get a flash of insight that feels like it comes out of nowhere. Well, here's the working definition I like to use with both clients and students, and it's the one we'll use for this series. Intuition is a form of knowing that arises without conscious reasoning. It shows up as a direct perception, a felt sense, or an inner clarity, often long before your logical mind has had time to organize the evidence. Notice a few key things in that definition. It's a form of knowing, not a random mood. It arises without conscious step-by-step reasoning, and it's direct. You don't argue yourself into it. Intuition simply arises within your awareness. Now, I want to be very clear here. I do not treat intuition as something airy-fairy or inaccessible, because I believe every one of us is hardwired for intuitive functioning. The way I've come to understand it through my own experience and years of working with others is this. Intuition is not supernatural. It is a normal human ability rooted in the way your brain, body, and subconscious processes vast amounts of information, all beneath your conscious awareness. Think of it as a profound inner intelligence, one that most of us were never formally taught to recognize, let alone trust. Let's unpack what's actually happening under the surface when you say, I just have a feeling about this. We'll look at how intuition is holistic in operation, how it's about pattern recognition on a massive scale. The communication is subtle, and it functions as a guide for decision-making. Basically, intuition is a bridge between the conscious and the unconscious minds. So first, let's take a look at that holistic operation piece. Your intuition does not operate in isolated bits of data. It takes in everything and is shaped by your unique filters, your life experiences, and your belief systems. Here are some of those things intuition picks up on automatically. The micro expressions on someone's face that you don't consciously register in your awareness. Subtle shifts in tone, posture, or timing. Your own past experiences in similar situations. Your values, your limits, and your unspoken longings and desires. And also the signals from your body, whether it's ease, tension, contraction, or expansion. All of these things are being constantly processed by your nervous system. When a gut feeling happens to you, it's not random. It's your whole system saying, I've seen this pattern before, I know something about this, so please pay attention. Now the conscious mind might say, I don't see a problem here. But your deeper intelligence, your intuition, is already 3 steps ahead. Second, let's take a look at that pattern recognition function. One of the most powerful and underrated skills of your brain is pattern recognition. Now, over your lifetime, you've been gathering data like how people behave when they're trustworthy versus when they're not, how your body acts right before you burn out, how your energy shifts when something is aligned versus when you're forcing it, what tends to happen when you ignore that little inner tug. Most of this learning didn't happen in words. It happened in impressions, feelings, and associations. So when you suddenly just know that a job won't be good for you even though the salary is great, or that now is exactly the time to reach out to someone, or that a conversation is about to go sideways, it's often because your subconscious has matched the current moment with dozens, hundreds, maybe even thousands of previous patterns, and it's trying to send you a message. It's your intuition talking to you. Third thing to remember is that intuitive communication is subtle. One of the most common questions I hear is, how do I know if it's intuition or just my mind talking? The first step is to notice how intuition tends to speak to you, because each one of us is unique in how we process intuitive information. Is it through physical sensations like a tight knot in your stomach, or an inexplicable lightness or expansion in your chest, or a sudden drop of energy when you consider an option? Or is it an emotional tone like a calm, grounded sense of, this is right, even though you're scared of what you're being asked to do? Is it a quiet unease that doesn't go away even when you rationalize it? Does it maybe come in the form of imagery or movies in your mind, like a picture that pops into your mind when you think of a choice you're getting ready to make? Or is it a scene of yourself in the future that feels very real and charged with energy? Maybe it's your inner voice in the form of a short couple of words, usually simple and direct. And intuition doesn't nag, by the way. It makes a statement. And then the choice, whether you follow it or not, well, that's up to you. As you listen to this, you might already be recognizing, oh, that thing I've been dismissing as a random circumstance, that might have been my intuition all along. Exactly. That recognition is the beginning of how you can strengthen your own intuitive connection. Intuition can be a guide for your decision making, especially when your logic is stalled or not working. Now, logic is beautiful. I use it all the time. But there are moments in life where logic alone simply can't process the full complexity of a situation. For example, when you're trying to make an important decision like, do I stay or do I leave this relationship? Do I follow this tug towards something more meaningful, or do I stay in the safe career I'm in? Is this collaboration I'm considering aligned with who I'm becoming, or is it more aligned with who I've been? In these threshold kind of moments, the data is often incomplete, the stakes feel really high, and the path, well, you can't compare it. This is where intuition becomes not just nice to have, but essential. Remember this, though. It doesn't replace rational thinking. It informs it. It adds a deeper dimension when you ask the question, given everything I consciously know and everything I subconsciously sense, what feels fundamentally true for me in this moment? Over and over, I've watched people burn years fighting with pros and cons, only to admit later, I knew it. I knew it on day one. I just didn't know how to trust that knowing. When I do a reading, I often find myself saying, you already know the answer, you just don't know that you know it. And part of what we're doing in this series is to help you reclaim that understanding. And finally, never forget that intuition functions as a bridge between the conscious and the unconscious. On one side, you have your left brain, your logical, limited, conscious mind, what you're actively aware of at any given time. And on the other side, the right side, is a vast landscape made up of your memories, your learned patterns, your embodied wisdom, your sensitivities, your values, and frankly, your connection to your own soul's guidance. Intuition is how information crosses that bridge and becomes available to you at a conscious level. So what does this mean? It means that when you dismiss your intuition, you're not being more rational. You're actually cutting yourself off from a huge source of vital, actionable intelligence. We've looked at what intuition is. Now let's take a few moments to examine what intuition is not. To really work skillfully with your intuition, you also need to know what it isn't. And this is where most people get confused. Intuition is not wishful thinking. This is a big one. Wanting something very badly, that dream job, the relationship, the approval, is not the same as intuitively knowing what's right for you. Now, wishful thinking sounds like, I sure hope this is it. Please let this work. There's often a grasping quality to these thoughts. Intuition sounds and feels more like, on some level, I know this is or isn't right for me, even if it doesn't match your fantasy. And here's the rub. Intuition will sometimes guide you away from what looks shiny and easy and toward what looks challenging but real. That's one of the ways you know it's not just your own preferences talking. Secondly, intuition is not fear or anxiety based. And here's where even very self-aware people get tripped up. Fear and anxiety are usually loud, spin in mental loops, and feel urgent, pressured, and future-oriented. In other words, you're asking yourself, what if, what if, what if? By contrast, intuition tends to be quieter, more grounded, and oriented in present time. This does not feel right. This does. Does that mean intuition always feels pleasant or takes us down an easy road? No. Intuition can ask you to leave situations you've outgrown, set boundaries, or step into something much bigger than feels comfortable for where you are right now. But even when the implications might scare you, the actual intuitive message itself carries a strange sort of inner calmness or steadiness about it. Third, intuition is not impulsivity or reactivity. Another confusing aspect of intuitive functioning is the thought that if I act quickly, that must be my intuition. Not necessarily. Impulsivity will feel like I have to act now or something terrible will happen, and it's often driven by adrenaline reactivity or a desire to escape discomfort. Intuition can arrive suddenly, yes, but the quality is different. It's more like a deep internal knowing or a sense of something dropping into your awareness. This is it. You just know it. Or alternatively, nope, not this. This isn't for me. And it won't have that frantic edge about it. Here's a useful test for you to try. If you give yourself a little breathing room, say take a walk or a night's sleep, does the sense that you're having strengthen or does it fade away? Genuine intuition tends to hold steady or clarify over time, not evaporate. Fourth, intuition is not fortune-telling. I want to say this very clearly. Intuition is not about locking in a fixed future. It's much more oriented toward what's true right now, what directions or potentials are aligned or misaligned with what's true right now, and what potentials or probabilities are opening or closing. That's why I tell people when I do a reading, I'm not going to make predictions, but I will read the probabilities of the choices you're presenting yourself with. Intuition basically gives you guidance in the present that shapes your future, but it doesn't determine it. When people expect intuition to act like a crystal ball, they either get disillusioned or they ignore the very real, subtle guidance that is available because it's not dramatic enough. And finally, intuition is not infallible, but that's not a problem. So this is where we bring some clarity into the conversation. You can absolutely misinterpret your intuition. Your trauma, fears, and conditioning, basically your filters, can distort what you perceive. You can project your hopes or unresolved issues onto your inner voice. You can hear your intuition correctly, but maybe you apply it in a not so correct way. This doesn't mean intuition is unreliable. It means your relationship with it, just like any other skill, needs practice and refinement. Think of it like learning a new language. At first, you'll misunderstand some words and nuances, but over time, by practicing, reflecting, and being honest with yourself, you get more fluent. The goal is not to become a flawless oracle. The goal is to become a deeply attuned partner with your own intelligence. So before we move on, let's take a few moments to examine the science behind intuition, but I'm just going to take a look at the basics here. If your rational mind is listening and going, okay, but how is this happening? That part of you is welcome here too. I know it well myself. I don't shut down the part of me that wants to know the how or the why. I let it ask questions, and then I give it something solid to stand on. So let's talk about how your intuitive system actually works. Psychologist Timothy Wilson uses the term adaptive unconscious to describe a huge portion of your mind that you don't have direct access to, but that's constantly processing enormous amounts of information every second, scanning for patterns and anomalies, learning from experience, and quietly influencing your behavior and your choices. He calls the adaptive unconscious your backstage supercomputer. If your conscious mind is like the person typing at the computer, then your adaptive unconscious is the entire operating system, the servers, the background apps, the security system, everything working behind the scenes so you can function in the world. So let's highlight first a few key points about this backstage system. Number one, it's fast. Your conscious mind is relatively slow and linear in function. It can only hold a few pieces of information in focus at a time. Your unconscious, on the other hand, can handle thousands of signals at the same time. This backstage system is efficient. It builds shortcuts. So if you've learned that a certain combination of cues usually means danger, or this is safe, or this will drain you, it stores that pattern and uses it again. It's also protective. Its job is to help you adapt, survive, and navigate complexity, often faster than conscious thought could ever manage. When we talk about intuition, we're essentially talking about how this vast, adaptive system communicates its conclusions to your conscious awareness. It doesn't send you a neatly formatted report. It sends you a feeling, or a nudge, an image, or a sense of something. That's intuition, the front stage translation of all that backstage processing. So here's a look at your brain in intuitive mode. I want to mention a couple of brain regions to give your logical mind what it craves. Information. First, the amygdala. Now, I've mentioned this earlier, but I want to expand on it a little bit here. The amygdala is an almond-shaped structure deep in the brain that's often talked about in relation to fear, but that's too narrow a definition. The amygdala is actually a relevance detector, and it works quickly. It evaluates, is this information? Is this safe? Is this familiar? Is this a threat or an opportunity? It reacts to subtle cues, again, tone of voice, posture, facial expression, even micro changes in your environment before you even consciously notice them. And the amygdala can trigger gut sensations, tension, alertness, or a sense of ease. So when you walk into a room and instantly feel that something is off, that's not you being dramatic. Your amygdala is picking up on hundreds of tiny, context-dependent signals and flagging them. The second area of your brain I want to talk about is the prefrontal cortex, which is the area behind your forehead. It's involved in planning and decision-making, weighing options, inhibiting impulses, and integrating emotional and rational information. When intuition is functioning well, your prefrontal cortex is not fighting your deeper knowing. It's listening to it and integrating it with the facts you're consciously aware of. You might feel an immediate gut response thanks to your unconscious processing and amygdala, Then use your prefrontal cortex to ask, what might this be pointing to, and how do I want to respond? In other words, intuition gives you a directional signal, and your higher reasoning helps you translate that into a grounded, appropriate action. And here's another thing that's really important to remember. Your body is part of your brain's intelligence too. I believe that one of the biggest mistakes in Western thinking is pretending the mind and the body are separate. In reality, your body is part of your intuitive intelligence network. The heart and the gut both have dense networks of neurons and are in constant communication with your brain through the vagus nerve. Changes in heart rate, muscle tone, breathing, and digestion all feed information upward to the brain. This ongoing, constant body-to-brain feedback shapes how you feel about situations, even if you never consciously notice the signals. And that's key here. But this is why your stomach will knot up around certain people, or your chest opens when you think about a particular path, or your energy drops the moment you consider saying yes to something that maybe you really don't want to say yes to. These aren't random quirks. They're somatic markers. In other words, physical signals your system uses to tag situations as safe, unsafe, aligned, misaligned, energizing, or draining. Intuition often rides on those body-based channels, and it's why I encourage students and clients to pay more attention to what their body is telling them. And now, let's add your personal history as another layer to this process. Every situation you've ever lived through has left traces, emotional memories, bodily reactions, beliefs and associations, like, when someone looks at me that way, it usually means X. Or when I override this particular feeling, things tend to go badly for me. Your adaptive unconscious will store these patterns. So when you're in a new situation, you might get an instant internal response before you can even explain it. Like, for example, you meet someone and feel instantly at ease. Your system may be matching them to a pattern of safe, or you're offered an opportunity and you feel a subtle dread, even though the opportunity looks really good on paper. Your history may be recognizing echoes of past experiences where perfect on paper cost you your sense of well-being. You don't consciously sort through your life story in that moment. Your deeper processing does it for you and delivers you a compressed result, very concise. Yes, no, be careful, not like this, pay attention here. That compressed result is what you experience as intuition. Now let's put this together in a simple human sequence so that you can better understand what's actually happening when you have an intuitive moment. You encounter a situation, a decision, a person, a room. Maybe it's an email or an invitation you receive. Your senses and your body are picking up more than you realize. The tone, the timing, micro-expressions, your own body's response to it, or even the context. Your adaptive unconscious then goes to work, and it will compare that moment with hundreds of stored patterns, consults your emotional learning, checks for threat, alignment, value clashes, and opportunities. Then the brain and the body vote together. Systems like the amygdala, prefrontal cortex, and your autonomic nervous system collaborate at incredibly high speeds. And you then receive the output in an intuitive language, a signal that comes in the form of a gut feeling, a sudden clarity, words in your mind, maybe a flash of an image of a possible future, or a sense of light versus heavy. Then your conscious mind wants to have its say too. It comes in after the fact and says, I don't know why, but this feels wrong. Or I can't explain it yet, but something in me knows I need to move towards this. From the outside, it can look mystical. From the inside, it can feel mysterious. Functionally, what you're saying in those moments is, my deeper processing has arrived at a conclusion faster than my conscious narrative can catch up. Why does this matter? Well, understanding more about how your intuition works physically changes your internal story from, ooh, this intuition stuff, that's a little woo-woo, or unreliable, or not dependable, to intuition is my system's fast, complex, experience-based processing translated into sensations and impressions I can respond to. Is it perfect? No. Can it be distorted by trauma, fear, and bias? Yes. That's why we work on discernment. And for those of you familiar with my work, you know the importance of discernment when you're working on strengthening your intuition. Your intuition is absolutely real. So when you notice yourself thinking, I don't know how I know, I just know, I want you to remember this. That statement is not an admission of flakiness. It's an honest acknowledgement that your explanation system runs much slower than your perception system does. Intuition is not fluffy. It's your inner supercomputer doing what it was designed to do and surfacing its conclusions in the only language fast enough for you to actually use in real time. Your feelings, those images, gut clenches, maybe just a sense of quiet inner clarity. And in this series, we're not just going to talk about it, we're going to learn how to work with it skillfully. For now, I want to ground this in real life so you can start mapping this onto your own experiences. Here's a couple of examples for you to consider. One is a case when intuition helped. The second is a story about when some intuitive signals were misread. So just imagine there's a point in your career where you're offered what on paper looks like the dream move for you. Higher pay, better title, with a recognizable brand. Everyone around you has the same reaction. Oh my God, you'd be crazy not to take this. Logically, they're right. Your bank account would thank you. But every time you quiet down and picture yourself actually living that life, something inside of you constricts. Your chest feels tight. Or maybe there's a subtle heaviness in your body. Or a steady inner phrase keeps repeating, this is going to cost you more than you think it will. And you try to argue with it, oh, I'm just afraid to change, or I'm being ungrateful, or maybe I'm sabotaging myself. And yet, underneath all your mental gymnastics, that quiet no remains. At the very last moment, against all external advice, you turn the offer down, choosing to rely upon your intuitive information. A few months later, you learn the division you would have joined went through a major upheaval, restructures, layoffs, and a culture that pushed people to burnout. At the same time, an entirely different path opened that allows you to do work that feels deeply aligned with your values and strengths. When you look back, it's obvious. And that's one thing that's common with intuition. We only see the value and the validity of the choices we make after the fact. In this case, you can see your intuition was reading the situation far beyond the job description and the salary. It was picking up on the cost to your energy, your creativity, your mental health. At the time, it just felt like a stubborn inner no you couldn't shake. But that no quietly and properly redirected the course of your life in a more positive direction. Now let me give you an example of the flip side of this. Picture this. You're in a relationship that is actually good for you. It's healthy, honest, and growth-oriented, but you almost walk away from it. You tell yourself, something just doesn't feel right here. My intuition is saying no to this. That sounds so sophisticated, so self-aware. But when you slow down and really examine what's happening, here's what you might discover. The intimacy you're experiencing is opening up old wounds, or you're being seen and that clearly feels terrifying to you. Or part of you might believe that if you stayed, you'd eventually be rejected, so, hey, better to leave first. That inner sensation was intense, so you slapped the label intuition on it and nearly bolt. But the more you sit with it, journal about it, talk it through with someone who knows your patterns, the more obvious it becomes. This wasn't the calm, steady clarity of intuition. This was fear, disguised as wisdom, trying to protect you from vulnerability. Underneath the fear, when you finally dare to look, there's a much quieter sense. This relationship is actually aligned. The next step isn't to run, it's to grow. That realization can be humbling, but it's also liberating because it teaches you a crucial distinction. Intuition may challenge you, but it usually doesn't spin you into panic. Fear often will hijack the language of intuition to keep you stuck. Learning to tell the difference is one of the core skills we'll keep circling back to in this series. Now here's a little self-reflection exercise for you to try, because this isn't a passive just listen to me journey. This is about you reclaiming your own inner authority. Here's a method for you to try so that you can start noticing your own intuitive history. So take a moment when you can be in a quiet place where you're not disturbed and you have your journal. And first you want to explore a time you just knew something. Can you recall a time when you had a strong gut feeling or sudden knowing about something, even without a logical explanation for it? Detail the situation. Note down whether you followed it or overrode your own intuition. What happened as a result of the choice you made? When you're done with that, try and recall a time when you may have brushed off one of those subtle signals only to realize later, I actually knew I needed to do that. What did you tell yourself at the time that convinced you to dismiss it? And how did it feel to recognize in hindsight that your intuition had been correct? Finally, maybe take some time to answer the question, what have you believed about intuition up to now? That it's woo or irrational? That intuition is only for highly spiritual or really gifted people? That it can't be trusted unless it comes with logical proof? Keep in mind that as you answer these questions, you're not just thinking. You're beginning to rebuild trust with a part of you that's been speaking to you this whole time. Here are some more tools for your intuitive toolkit. Keep in mind that for this first week, I'm not asking you to make huge life decisions based on intuition. We're going to start with something gentler and in many ways more powerful. Here are some exercises that will help you with developing your awareness. For the next 7 days or longer, if it works well for you, play a quiet internal game with yourself. Anytime you sense a subtle pull towards or away from something, a quick internal yes or no, or have a bodily reaction you can't logically explain, pause and mentally name it. Ooh, that feels like an intuitive nudge. my body just responded to that. Something in me lit up when they said XYZ. By doing so, you're acknowledging the intuitive signal you just received, and over time, what happens is this will heighten your receptivity to those signals. You don't have to act on it yet. You're simply building the muscle of catching it in real time instead of noticing it only in hindsight. That's really what the awareness path is all about. And curiosity is key here. You're not judging. You're simply observing. The second thing I'd like you to try is to record your intuitive hits. Create a log on paper or in your phone. And each time you notice an intuitive moment, record the context, the signal, and the choice that you made. In other words, what was happening at the time you received the signal? How did it show up for you? Was it a body sensation, a flash of an image, a mood shift, an inner voice? And the choice, did you follow it, ignore it, or dismiss it? Over time, this becomes a surprisingly revealing map of how your intuition tends to speak to you and how accurate it is when you listen. Most people are shocked in a good way when they see their own patterns laid out like this. Third, I want you to try some mini sensory check-ins. A few times a day, give yourself 30 seconds, no more than that, and if you can, close your eyes. Then ask yourself, what am I noticing right now without trying to think about it? Do a body scan. Is it tight, open, heavy, energized? How is your emotional tone? Are you calm, irritated, restless, content? And make a note of any images, words, or impressions that float up in your awareness. Now, you're not hunting for a message here. You're practicing the art of listening inward without immediately analyzing or dismissing what you find. These types of simple daily exercises will help you strengthen your intuitive connection. I promise. As we close this first episode in the series on intuition, I want you to really grasp this concept. You're not trying to install intuition. You're learning to recognize and partner with something that has been operating quietly in the background your entire life. It's probable you've already used it to step away from people who weren't good for you without fully knowing why you did. Or you said yes to opportunities that made no sense at the time but changed everything for you. Or you've navigated moments where there simply wasn't enough information but you moved forward anyway. The difference now is that you're bringing this faculty into conscious collaboration. In the episodes to come, we'll explore how intuition actually functions in your nervous system and psyche, how to distinguish it more reliably from fear, fantasy, and conditioning, and how to strengthen it so it becomes a trustworthy inner compass in both subtle daily choices and major life pivots. For now, just start paying attention. Notice the whispers. Become more aware of the tugs and the tightening, the lightness, the quiet inner guidance that doesn't go away. You don't have to fully understand them yet. You just have to start acknowledging that they're there because they are, and they've been trying to guide you for a very long time. And here's what I know to be true. The more you engage with these signals that you're receiving from the universe, from your soul, the stronger those signals become, and the more of those signals you'll receive. Well, that's our time for today. If you found value in this episode, please share it with 2 other people so that together we can bring more light to this world. If you need guidance about a current life situation, are in need of energy healing, or want to reconnect with a friend or loved one living on the other side of life, just go to my website, juliamarie.us, and click the Book Now button on the homepage. Until next time, remember, you are the light you seek.